Introduction to the Dragon of the Peerless Tang Sect. Douluo 2, Peerless Tang Sect Fellow. At the beginning of the protagonist's climax, the family power is immense, and there is no need to lick the dog or mix it with dog blood in the plot. Try to treat the original characters as well as possible. Chapter 1. 3 Divine Families, Taixu Jiang Clan. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The eastern part of the Heavenly Soul Empire, Qingzhou Province. Although Qingzhou Province is under the jurisdiction of the Heavenly Soul Empire, its politics, military, finances, and people's hearts are all controlled by the Taixu Emperor, who is known as the number one in the world. The surname of Taixu Zong is Jiang, so it is also known as the Taixu Jiang family. It is an ancient family that has been passed down for thousands of years. Young Jiang Shua stood at the martial soul awakening ceremony, feeling a bit dazed. He is not a native of Douluo and only arrived at this plane due to an accident. Unlike many predecessors who traveled through time, he almost sat at the peak from birth. Because he is the young master of the world's first sect. At this moment, due to the impact of ritual on memory, the past history of Douluo world slowly came to his mind. More than 4,000 years ago, the continent collided. Not only did it bring nearly twice the territory of the original Douluo continent. It also caused a stir in the previously silent Soul Master realm. Soul Master, a profession comparable to Soul Master. With the power of Soul Guides, ordinary title Douluo who have not reached the realm of Super Douluo can compete against the powerful Super Douluo. But the changes brought about by continental collisions 4,000 years ago are not limited to this. The most eye-catching. After 6,000 years, finally someone has become a god again. Jiang Yuan. The first-generation leader of the Taixu sect, with unparalleled insight and action, entered the depths of the Sun and Moon continent alone during the fierce battle between the 3 kingdoms of Douluo continent and the Sun and Moon Empire, killing and devouring a soul beast that had been around for nearly 800,000 years. In one fell swoop, he broke through the barrier and created a new deity. The Taixu God. Later, the Taixu sect flourished, and the Taixu Xianlong martial soul leapt to become the world's first beast martial soul. After more than 1,000 years of ascension, the Taixu God. Something that shocked the jaw happened again. Surprisingly, another god has appeared in the Jiang family. Named, the God of Space. Although it is an inherited deity, the value of this deity is no less than that of the Rakshasa and angel gods from thousands of years ago. The Taixu Jiang family, a dual god, went further. The Taixu Xianlong martial soul has become the first martial soul in the Douluo continent. After the ascension of the God of Space, it lasted for over 1,000 years. The shocking thing happened again. Jiang family, ecstatic once again welcomes a new god. At that time, Taixu Douluo Jiangpa passed the 9 divine examinations and inherited the strongest elemental deity position. The God of Thunder. At this point, the 3 gods of the Taixu Jiang family reached their peak. After decades of war, the collision of the Sun and Moon Empire resulted in the preservation of ancestral temples at the cost of ceding large territories. And the original 3 kingdoms were also not comfortable. Wars and disasters caused great damage to the country's vitality, and the ruling class continued to increase their efforts to accumulate wealth. The lives of the common people were in dire straits. For 4,000 years, although the Douluo continent and the Sun-Moon continent may appear to merge on the surface, the internal contradictions have intensified day by day. The aristocratic class, originally belonging to the 3 kingdoms, intensified corruption under the sugar-coated shells of the Sun and Moon Empire. As the only 2 profiteers in the mainland war, the Taixu Jiang clan and Shrek Academy are becoming increasingly prosperous. More than 1,000 years after the ascension of Thor. The Taixu Jiang family once again welcomes the annual martial soul awakening ceremony. The 3 deities born from a family that has been passed down for thousands of years are all beneficiaries of the Taixu Xianlong martial soul. So the Jiang family attaches great importance to the awakening of martial souls. And the young master Jiang Shuo, as the son of the contemporary Taixu sect master, has the bloodline of the 98-level Super Douluo. It can be considered highly anticipated. The founder of Lao Lizi, Douluo Jiang Yuancher, sat in the main seat while stroking his beard while sweeping his remaining light towards his only son. In the vast sapphire hall, there were dozens of pairs of eyes, either intentionally or pretending to be unintentional, all looking towards the young master Jiang Shuo, who was awakening his martial soul. Jiang Shuo himself also held his breath and stood in front of the awakened six-pointed soul guide. After 6 years in Douluo world, I finally have to undergo this well-known ceremony. I have some understanding of this world in my past life, but not much. After passing through here, I realize that there seemed to be a slight deviation in the plot. No, it's a big deviation. A Taixu sect appeared inexplicably, and its strength was somewhat outrageous. And now things are starting to become a little inexplicably familiar. How does this scene resemble the familiar online storyline in my mind? Oh my goodness, wouldn't you give yourself a whole useless martial soul and force yourself to fight? Jiang Shuo muttered a few words in his stomach, and a hint of abnormality appeared in his heart. The awakening of martial souls is undoubtedly the most significant thing in a person's life. Although his parents are both top-level martial souls, who can withstand that 1 in 10,000? Isn't that unlucky guy Yu Xiaojiang a living example? As the young master, if he awakens a useless martial soul with the urine nature of a big family, I'm afraid I will really suffer from the Douluo continent version of 30 years of Hedong, 30 years of Heshi, don't bully young poor. If we leave the world's first sect young master alone, we will not be able to succeed. We must launch a young counterattack. Jiang Shuo felt a bit guilty. But there was no way to beat the drum, and the sect deacon of the awakening ceremony had already reached out in front of him to signal. The steward smiled kindly and said, "Young master, it's your turn. Don't be afraid, just stand up." Jiang Shuo followed his words. The light emitted by the awakening soul guide at his feet instantly converged towards him. Spirited at the moment when the young man's martial soul came out, a dazzling silver light immediately filled the entire hall paved with marble and sapphire. With just a click, in the blink of an eye, the alloy-forged awakening instrument actually cracked open. Jiang Shuo looked at a small gun suddenly appearing in his palm, feeling somewhat confused. Isn't it the Taixu Xianlong martial soul? The gun body was silver white all over, with a straight small dragon head at the junction, as if the tip of the gun was spit out by the dragon head, and the gun body was covered with faint dragon patterns, making it so heroic. Silver Shuo gun. The word suddenly popped out of the boy's mind. Silver is pure in color, while bulk is sturdy and carries a grand meaning. A pure and sturdy gun. This commotion instantly made the hall, which was originally just whispering, noisy and noisy. The martial soul of the young master. Surprisingly, it's not the Taixu Xianlong. Ah. Really? Hiss. Those who awaken their martial souls are all 6-year-old young people, naturally not deep in the city. Despite trying to suppress the curiosity on their faces, they can't help but stretch out their heads to look at Jiang Shuo. Some of them had already shown surprised smiles in secret. The family is too big, there are too many people, and there are also too many competitors. And the young master, who held a high position within the clan, surprisingly awakened a spear martial soul. Xiaozong mainly falls, and other peers can eat enough. In the eyes of their descendants of Taixu, no matter what martial soul in this world, it is naturally incomparable to Taixu Xianlong. No matter how strong other martial souls are, can they become gods? No. But Taixu Xianlong's martial soul can, and there are already more than one. As a young leader of the sect, Jiang Shuo has awakened a spear-like martial soul, which undoubtedly deprives him of the possibility of inheriting the position of the sect leader in the future. As for the twin martial souls, no one present thinks it's possible. Twin martial souls come at a cost, that is, 2 martial souls must be at similar levels. Taixu Xianlong is the #1 martial soul in the world. If another martial soul appears on him at the same time, the powerful energy of the martial soul is enough to explode a person. The ready-made case is that none of the ancestors of Taixu are twin martial souls. Jiang Yuanshi could no longer care about his dignity and status. He walked up to his son with one swift step and looked at the silver small gun in his hand, his face disappointed and surprised. The beautiful woman who had been guarding beside her also flashed up to the young man. Although she is over 100 years old, the wife of the patriarch, Chen Yuan, still has a beautiful appearance and delicate skin. Her green hair does not show any whitening. The couple looked at each other and whispered in unison, "The martial soul has mutated." Jiang Shua felt a bit confused and asked, "Father, mother, is it a benign mutation or?" As soon as the question was asked, Jiang Shua had an answer in his heart. He could feel the toughness and faint aura of the silver gun. It should not be a malignant mutation at least. Jiang's father sighed and looked at his wife in a complicated way, then at his son. "Anyway, it hasn't developed towards the worst." He shook his head and said, "I don't know yet, let's wait for my father's induction." After speaking, the highest cultivation Yuanshi Douluo present gently placed his palm on the silver small spear. After a few breaths, Jiang's father slowly opened his eyes. With some hesitation, he said, "The power contained inside is quite significant, it doesn't look like a vicious mutation." Young Jiang Shua pursed his lips and whispered, "Father, I can feel that this is indeed not a waste martial soul. Your martial soul is the Taixu Xianlong, while your mother's is the soul-breaking spear. It should be a combination of the two. Let's test our soul power first. The ceremony hasn't ended yet." Jiang's father lowered his head to look at his son, who had always had his own opinions, and nodded lightly. If he cared, it would be chaotic. Can it be that the awakening instrument cannot bear to crack, or can it be a useless martial soul? He said to the nearby deacon, "Continue, test my son's innate soul power. If nothing unexpected happens, it should be leveled 9 or above." Jiang Yuanshi has his own confidence in saying so. He and his wife are both born with full soul power, tracing back to their ancestors for 3 generations, and there is no one below the 9th level of innate ability. Martial souls can mutate, but there is a high probability that innate soul power will not. Chapter 2. Martial Soul Awakening. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As expected, the crystal ball measuring innate soul power burst out with a dazzling white light. The adults watching the ceremony in the venue had a clear idea in their minds. Innate soul power. Although the martial soul is poor, the innate soul power is good. Many people have slightly changed their previous views because innate full soul power is extremely rare even in large families. This is a perfect realm, and even if the environment before and after birth is good, it is still difficult for the children of the big clan to appear. Because of perfection, it has always been rare, and the children of today's aristocrats are generally at levels 7 to 9. However, because the martial soul of the young master of Taixu sect is not a dragon-type martial soul, even if his future achievements are high, he cannot inherit the position of the sect leader. The deacon who presided over the awakening ceremony was filled with resentment in his heart, but with great respect on his face, he invited the young master to use the awakening soul guide. Jiang Yuanshi, who stood like a green pine tree, bowed and said, "Master, the young master is born with full soul power. I saw it, you can take the other younger generation down first." Yes. The awakened young and young girls of the Taixu sect finally glanced at Jiang Shua with a pitiful yet envious gaze. Then a wave of happiness rose in my heart and I walked out. Jiang Yuanshi waved the person back and looked at his only son, who was only as tall as his abdomen, with complex and relieved eyes. "Not bad, there is a slight difference in martial soul, but the innate soul power inherits your father's and my great talent." Jiang's mother, Chen Yuan, bit on her slender plain white jade lips and whispered with her head lowered. "Husband, I'm sorry, it's because of me that Shore is. But he will eventually be our son, no matter what, I will protect him for a lifetime. Chen Yuan, who is also a super Douluo and has reached level 97 of terrifying cultivation, exudes a resolute aura and embraces the young man in his arms. Upon hearing his wife speak, Jiang Yuanshi's face changed slightly, he remained silent for a while, and finally let out a long sigh. The awakening of the offspring's martial soul is based on both parents, with the dominant martial soul occupying a dominant position. He never expected that after the eldest son awakened, he would become a spear-like martial soul. You're right. Even if Shore is not doing well, he is still my son. As the leader of the Taixu sect, I can still protect him for a lifetime. Chen Yuan lowered his eyelids, and a faint sadness filled his beautiful eyes. Due to the constraints of the Jiang family's etiquette and laws, sons are rarely seen in daily life. At this moment, a mixture of regret and guilt surged in my heart. He hugged the young man in his arms even tighter. The imprisoned boy had a faint fragrance of clear wood lingering around his nose, which made him feel a bit uncomfortable. My mother doesn't love pink and daisy, it's a natural body fragrance. After listening to the entire conversation, Jiang Shua felt that if he didn't speak up again, he might be killed in a while. Father, mother, actually. I just sensed that I also have a martial soul. At the moment of testing his soul power, an induction rushed into his spiritual sea, causing him to fall into a trance. After finally stabilizing, he saw the form of his second martial soul. The reason for not showing it was due to the fact that everyone in the hall was watching just now. Only those who know how to preserve can live for a long time, and Jiang Shua deeply understands this truth. Jiang's father suddenly turned his head, his tiger eyes wide open, and his profound cultivation was almost uncontrollable, overflowing with his body. Are you serious about this? Hurry up and release it for my father to see. No wonder he was pleasantly surprised, it's just unbelievable. If there could be a second martial soul, it would probably be his Taixu Xianlong. And in that case, wouldn't this spear-shaped martial soul be comparable to the Taixu Xianlong? His son is actually a twin martial soul, or is it such a configuration? Jiang's mother Chen Yuan also lowered her head in an instant, and an indescribable surprise appeared on her dignified and elegant jade face. Sure, don't lie to your mother, is it true? If my son fabricates lies to prevent them from becoming disharmonious, it would be very inappropriate. Jiang Shua nodded and extended his left hand. In an instant, a brilliant golden light once again filled the entire blue hall. A deep dragon cry followed. The sound of dragon chants gradually becomes louder, causing soul tremors. Jiang Yuanshi quickly set up a soul power barrier to prevent outsiders from peeking inside. But in that moment, he felt a slight stagnation in his soul power. Very faint, but it did indeed appear. This makes him unbelievable. You know, he is already at the pinnacle of Super Douluo, almost one step away from reaching the limit of Douluo. Within the entire sect, only his father, Taixu Douluo, was stronger than him. Now, his soul power has even shown a slight stagnation due to his son's martial soul. This made him smile bitterly, but at the same time, he felt relieved that there was no difference. Perhaps it is still the Taixu Xianlong with a purer bloodline. A small golden dragon phantom appeared in the left hand of young Jiang Shua, about a foot long, covered in golden thunder, and the sound of crackling kept ringing. Jiang Shua raised his fair and tender face, and the drumming he had just done was no longer in his heart. Father, it seems like another mutated martial soul. But he is indeed a dragon-shaped martial soul. What is the name of this martial soul? Jiang Yuanshi quickly asked. Returning to my father, I call him the Nine Xian Golden Dragon, as if he possesses both the power of thunder and space. Jiang Yuanshi remained silent and silently gazed at the golden dragon, whose eldest son's left hand was constantly swimming. There was no speech for a while. For some reason, Jiang Shuo felt that the golden dragon was actually absorbing his soul power. So he asked, "Father, can I take it back?" Jiang's mother, Chen Yuan, saw the situation and pushed her husband, gently asking, "What kind of stupidity is there? Twin martial souls, innate full soul power, and your most desired dragon martial soul, my son has done his best." Jiang Yuanshi slowly regained his senses, with a hint of clear light flashing in his eyes. "That's why I was stunned." Yuanshi Douluo, one of the most powerful figures in the world, suddenly had a solemn expression on his face. The deep black pupils looked straight at the pale young man. "Put it away, you're not allowed to show it in front of anyone without my and your grandfather's permission in the future." Jiang Yuanshi's voice showed a very stern and solemn tone, which left Jiang Shuo stunned. But he immediately nodded and said, "I know, father." Chen Yuan, who was originally frowning on the side, seemed to have remembered something and looked up and down at his husband and son again. After a moment, a spiritual light flashed through her mind and she suddenly realized. Jiang Yuanshi patted his eldest son's shoulder, and his voice softened. "Let's go back first. I want to see your grandfather," he said. Jiang Shuo obediently turned around and walked out of the luxurious Sapphire Awakening Hall. Chapter 3. Lonely Youth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Taixu Mountains are the location of the Taixu sect. Located on the eastern border of the Heavenly Soul Empire and the Douluo Empire. It is a vast mountain range spanning 800 miles from north to south. But now, it has been completely occupied by the Taixu sect. No one, including the imperial family of the Heavenly Soul Empire, has any complaints. The reason is none other than that the Taixu sect is strong enough. As the young leader of the Taixu sect, Jiang Shuo has his own mountain peak. Located in the back mountain range with abundant spiritual energy, it is one of the peaks with the most abundant spiritual energy. Several wooden palaces are attached to the mountain peaks, serving as Jiang Shuo's sleeping quarters, study, and practice hall. The awakening of the 9 golden dragon consumed almost 60% of his soul power, so the young man's face was still a bit pale at this moment. After returning to her own palace on the mountain peak, the charming and lovely double ponytailed maid immediately stepped forward and took off the boy's coat. Originally, the maids all had prescribed hairstyles, but Jiang Shuo wanted to do so, and no one dared to stop him. "Young master, your expression." The maid was shocked and pale, and her heart suddenly became fearful. Her feet became weak and she almost fell to the ground. Jiang Shuo shook his head and said, "I'm just a little tired. You can go brew a cup of snow ginseng tea." After coming into this world, I received systematic physical training from a young age, and various major tonics took turns to play. Nowadays, for a small cup of ginseng tea, he can drink it as water. The maid calmed down and quickly agreed, "Okay, I'll go now." The young man who had taken off his long coat appeared handsome and upright in stature. Although only 6 years old, he has already reached a height of 1.4 meters. The aristocratic children of Douluo continent are similar to him. Here, they have abundant spiritual energy and have received nourishment and exercise since childhood. The young people are generally very tall. At the age of 6, they all look around 11 or 12 years old. Jiang Shuo's study is very large, but his desk is not placed in the center of the north, but by the window. He could turn his head and see the verdant scenery of the mountains outside the window. After awakening his martial soul, Jiang Shuo realized that his path was almost fixed. Without a doubt, he must work hard to cultivate in the future and continue the glory of his family. But the young man has no rebellious heart. In this mystical world, the starting point of his birth is almost the pinnacle of 99% of people's lives. There are countless people in the world who are covered in clothing, frozen and starving to death. Those people who want to cultivate have no way to go to heaven or earth, and he really has nothing to complain about. See God Tang San. Shrek Academy, Dragon God Douluo Muen, Sun and Moon Empire Ming De Hall, Star Do Forest Beast God Emperor Heaven, and the Far North, Snow Emperor. These names Jiang Shua knew from a young age, which also helped him locate the time of this plane. 10,000 years later, the sea god Tang Sanqing became the god. In his past life, he had known about this famous world. Although he has forgotten a lot now, the feeling in his heart is difficult to calm, but it has never dissipated. I never expected that one day he would also be able to pierce through Douluo with his soul. Jiang Shua shook his head and couldn't help but smile. Since everyone has come, how can one live up to this identity without breaking through a new world? So, then let yourself tremble and tremble in this world. As the sun rises, the day is officially set until 6 o'clock in the morning. For soul masters, meditation can replace sleep, so not many disciples of the Taixu sect choose to sleep in, and most of them have already woken up for morning exercises. Before the ancestor of Taixu sect ascended to the throne, he left behind a cultivation technique called Taixu True Yuan Ju. Having a forged physique and the effect of consolidating the true elemental elixir field. Once officially introduced and condensed into a elixir field, soul power and true elements can be freely transformed. Those who achieve great success in practice have several times, even dozens of times, more soul power than ordinary soul masters. Everything depends on the size of the dantian. Such martial arts are not passed down by everyone, only true descendants of the Jiang family can cultivate them. As the legitimate son of the patriarch, Jiang Shua naturally has no restrictions. The young man sat cross-legged at the highest point of his mountain peak, constantly exhaling clear energy, and his body was constantly circulating with the size and circumference of the heavens. The true elements in his meridians were also constantly compressed and filled, even expanding his dantian. Although he is only 6 years old, he has already trained the true Yuan Ju to the 3rd level. You should know that each layer of true elemental determination corresponds to different levels of soul masters, and the higher you go, the more difficult it is to cultivate. If one can truly cultivate the true element to the 9th level of great perfection, it may truly surpass all living beings in the Douluo continent. Unfortunately, no one has reached the 9th level of the Taixu sect for nearly 1,000 years. Perhaps due to soul piercing, his soul power is much more resilient than ordinary people, and he learns things exceptionally quickly. He was only 6 years old when he was supposed to reach the 3rd level of the Soul Sect and Soul King realm. Of course, the true cultivation is only a soul warrior. Jiang Shua slowly opened his eyes, and a faint light condensed and dissipated at the pupils. The young man's body emitted strands of imperceptible white energy, which was caused by the vaporization of impurities in the meridians after the true element entered the body and compressed. Another step forward. He stood up satisfied, patted his body, unconsciously revealing the joy of progress. Just as I returned to my dormitory and had just washed and tidied up, someone arrived at the main peak. He is a Soul Douluo level deacon. He was already a fairly strong figure on the mainland, but became a vassal of the Jiang family. The Soul Douluo elder, who is about 60 or 70 years old, bowed to the young man and respectfully said, "Yu reading book www.yuukangshu.net. Young master, please go to Taiji Peak, Elder Tai." Jiang Shua was slightly surprised when he heard this, and his face immediately showed surprise. He quickly asked, "Uncle Chen, did Grandpa leave the border?" The Soul Douluo deacon, who was called Uncle Chen, smiled lightly and nodded, but it's been almost an hour now. We were just discussing matters with the Lord." Jiang Shua took a long breath and smiled. Grandpa has successfully passed the level. It seems he has gained something. Take me to Tai Chi Peak quickly, I can't wait any longer. The Taixu Douluo, who possesses the ultimate Douluo strength, is the ultimate stabilizing needle of the entire sect. Even his own father cannot replace this position. The reason why the Taixu sect can stand proudly on the mainland and claim to be the #1 sect in the world is precisely because every generation has the appearance of extreme Douluo. If this necessary condition is lost, it may be difficult to be called a super first-class force alongside Shrek Academy. It can only be called a first-class force like the main body sect, the Mingda Hall of the Sun and Moon Empire, and the Haotian sect. But more importantly, perhaps due to intergenerational reasons, Grandpa Jiang Yundong is not as serious as his father. Every time I see him, I look kind and kind. Uncle Chen agreed and hugged the young man's arms, spreading his martial soul wings and flying towards the sky. After a moment, the flowing wings flying swallow soul landed in the place where the spiritual energy of the Taixu sect was most abundant. The cliff called Taixu Peak. This is the living and secluded place of every generation of Taixu Douluo. Without permission, one will be severely punished once approaching. Although Jiang Shua is only 6 years old, he has deeply felt the strict hierarchy within and outside the family, even his relatives are bound, let alone other disciples. Chapter 4. Clan Secrets. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The square of Taiji Peak is very wide, and the young man estimated it to be as big as 2 or 3 football fields in his past life. To the north of the square is a large hall that is 9 zhang high and over 30 zhang long. It is called Tai Chi Hall. The entire body of the hall is made of solid spiritual wood to stabilize the spiritual energy of this place. As soon as he entered the main hall, Jiang Shua felt his pores all over his body suddenly open. A supreme sense of comfort swept across the body. He has an impulse to sit down and practice. This impulse is quite strong, entirely driven by the instinct of his 6-year-old body. Suddenly, several gazes converged and directly hit the young man, who was his uncle's over 100 years old. Although these people are their own elders, they are also old antiques who stick to their level. Jiang Shua collected his energy and suppressed this impulse to prevent embarrassment. Is Xiaoshua here? Not bad, I heard that the martial soul awakened yesterday. Are you the only one with innate full soul power? I remember that our sect has not had innate full soul power for more than 3 years, it's rare. Seeing the young man approaching, the uncles immediately shifted their gaze to the front, titled Douluo. One of them smiled and said, "Once one person speaks, others will immediately answer. Unfortunately, he is a spear-type martial soul and did not inherit our clan's powerful Taixu Xianlong. Isn't that right? Tell me, the young master of the Taixu sect, the whole Lao Shizi's silver spear is coming out. What's going on? Alas. According to me, my elder brother shouldn't have married Qin Yuan's sister. In law back then. Even if he did, he shouldn't have been the main wife. The head of the most prestigious sect in the world, actually only has one only son now. It's unreasonable." Jiang Shua's mother Qin Yuan was also present, but Jiang Yuanshi had not arrived yet, and she was not surnamed Jiang, so she stood with the young Jiang Shua. Although she is not weak in strength, she is actually somewhat helpless towards these naturally arrogant and self-proclaimed sons of gods. On the one hand, the Supreme Elder is still alive, and her husband, Yuan Douluo, is not the strongest in the sect. On the other hand, although she is the wife of the sect leader, she is from a different surname. These people dare not openly curse her, but only secretly poke that her soul-breaking spear is not effective. Jiang Shua stabilized his figure and raised his fair and tender forehead to look at the second-speaking uncle, a level 93 titled Douluo. My martial soul is a silver spear. Although it has not appeared in the history of mainland China, the existence that can make my father's Taixu Xianlong give way can be a poor martial soul. Uncle Wu's statement is absurd. Then, he turned to the third one who secretly poked that his mother was not worthy of being the wife of the sect leader, the 92nd level sensitive attack titled Douluo, and his face was slightly cold. Isn't it a bit presumptuous for Uncle Lu to say these rebellious and immoral words in front of Grandpa's Tai Chi Hall? My mother married her father with my grandfather's personal consent. Why does Uncle Lu have an opinion? Why don't he speak in front of Grandpa and secretly mock him while my father is not around? As soon as the cold and aggressive rhetorical questions were spoken, the two sinister uncles turned black in an instant. Chen Yuan was originally somewhat angry, but due to the Taixu Douluo in the hall, he did not get angry. Now he turned his head in shock and looked at his 6-year-old son. I noticed a hint of innate arrogance on the boy's face, without feeling cowardly because he was facing a powerful uncle. Her heart suddenly touched. A warm current slowly flowed through her heart, and her dignified and elegant yet elegant oval face suddenly showed an imperceptible sense of satisfaction. Son, I have grown up. Being questioned and refuted by a 6-year-old junior, the two uncles who spoke looked a bit embarrassed. Especially the sixth uncle who spoke later, his face was about to turn black like the bottom of a pot. Kid. Did you talk to your uncle like that? Anyway, I am also your elder, the elder of the family. Even if you say something wrong, you should be careful to correct it instead of such a grandiose questioning. Uncle Lu's voice sank and his eyes narrowed. A trace of the prestige of the title Douluo overflowed from the surface of the body, intentionally or unintentionally pressing towards the young man. I haven't grown up yet, so disrespectful to an uncle with a title of Douluo. If you grow up and lucky enough to inherit the position of the sect leader, what's the point? Jiang Shua's soul power was sharp, and he felt the pressure as soon as it came out. But he won't take a step back, because behind his back is his mother. It is also his dignity as a young master. He gritted his teeth, his chest bulging again, and the silver-white power of the true element suddenly erupted, trying to resist the slightest wave of pressure. The other uncles present had different expressions, some hesitated to speak, some wanted to intervene, and some sat and watched the situation. The family is too big, it is impossible for people's hearts to be without any fluctuation. Those who wanted to help were stopped by those who wanted to see a good movie, and in the end, the two sides fought off. Some people are eager to see the young master being suppressed and then come up with their own children. The pressure of the title Douluo was unbearable, and Jiang Shua felt a breath that was overwhelming, like a raging beast. Suddenly, my heart beat like thunder, and a thin layer of sweat appeared on my forehead. Chen Yuan's face darkened as he grabbed the young man's shoulder to lift him up behind him. Jiang Shua shook his head and whispered, "They dare not harm me. Let me do it myself this time. Mother, this is the ordeal that a young master should bear." Chen Yuan was taken aback for a moment, and the small boy in front of him seemed to have an indescribable sense of pride. Just like what my husband once had, but now he has been annihilated. Sure. The young man's face was solemn and resolute, with a straight chest, standing proudly in the square. Uncle Lu's face was a bit embarrassed. With his level 92 strength, he couldn't overwhelm Jiang Shua at once. Feeling both embarrassed and angry in my heart, I was about to increase my strength. Suddenly. Cough. A powerful cough came, and the young man felt a relief of pressure all over his body. A figure appeared out of thin air in front of the mother and son under pressure. The tall body blocked all the projected gazes. Yuanshi Douluo, Jiang Yuanshi. He squinted his eyes when he arrived late, constantly scanning dozens of people on the court, his blood brothers and sisters. A force of unparalleled pressure from those present suddenly erupted from Jiang Yuanshi's tall body, sweeping across the entire Tai Chi Hall square. A deep questioning voice sounded like a giant stone. "Do you have any objections to the position of the wife of the sect leader and the young master? If there are any, speak up on the spot and let me see." The power of the 98-level title Douluo is enough to shake the sky, and Jiang Yuanshi, who is both the head of a sect and the eldest son, has a natural aura of a superior. His gaze rotated, and no one dared to greet him. No, absolutely no. Just now was just a joke with my sister-in-law and nephew. Don't take it to heart, big brother. The first uncle who spoke just now immediately stood up and laughed. He had only sighed before without mocking, so Jiang Yuanshi didn't look at him, but instead at the other two cousins. The two title Douluo who spoke just now, their faces twitched and they slowly lowered their heads. Big brother, I'm sorry, my younger brother talked too much. I will definitely take it as a warning in the future. Jiang Yuancher's face softened slightly and he didn't hold on to it anymore. He is ultimately not only a husband and father, but also the head of a family. Seeing this situation, uncles all looked away and smiled, pretending nothing had happened. However, the hidden undercurrent in the heart cannot easily dissipate. Jiang Yuancher turned his head and walked slowly to his eldest son's side, supporting his shoulders that were slightly bent due to pressure. Stand up straight, man, you have to look like a man, he said in a deep voice. Yes, father. Jiang Shua straightened his waist again and looked straight at the uncles next to him, without any hesitation. The Douluo of Taixu sect no longer looked at the young man, but pretended to have unintentional laughter and chatted. Chapter 5. Powerful Twin Martial Souls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Until a voice of vicissitudes passes through the palace gate and reaches the open square. Come in. Everyone's expressions suddenly changed, and the titled Douluo, including Yuancher Douluo, all bent down and bowed upwards, bowing and saying. See the Supreme Elder. Everyone didn't see their figure, but they had already bent down and saluted. Let's all enter the hall. Yes, everyone in the Jiang family responded one after another. Upon arriving in the hall, the descendants of the Jiang family bowed down again. The old man did not ask the crowd to stand up, but instead scanned from the left pillar to the right pillar with a calm expression. After 3 years of seclusion, he found that apart from a few of his descendants, there was no progress in their cultivation, and his expression gradually became disappointed. You still need to work harder. The glory of my family belongs to me, but it also belongs to you. As I grow old, ultimately it still belongs to you. Douluo quickly responded, don't worry, Elder Tai. We will know. Jiang Yundong sighed and shook his head, his gaze finally fixed on the left head of Changsun. The old man with crane hair and childlike appearance finally showed a smile. Sure, come to my grandfather's place. Let me see. Your progress is much better than uncle's and uncle's. The boy obediently stepped forward and stood next to the old man's golden dragon chair. Not bad, not bad. Jinyuan Ju has reached the 3rd level of cultivation, stronger than your father. He is only at his age when the 1st level is complete. The old man showed a pleased smile, stroking his beard with one hand and resting it on his grandson's shoulder with the other, whispering and praising. The crowd of Douluo below showed an envious expression, and they also brought the younger generation to come. No one has such treatment. Not to mention getting close to the dragon chair, I don't even have the qualification to be affectionately touched by the Supreme Elder. The young boys and girls of the same age as Jiang Shua also showed an extremely envious expression, but dared to look up at Yi Sun Yiqing in the audience with their childish faces, unable to step forward. I heard that only Shor was born with full soul power among the younger generation this year. The old man averted his gaze and looked down sternly. A group of Jiang family children, all in their 10s or 100s, lowered their heads and didn't dare to look at the old man. Finally, as the leader of the sect, Yuancher Douluo straightened his back and stood up, saying, Father, this year there is a total of 1 innate full soul power, 1 innate 9th level soul power, and 5 innate 8th level soul power in the sect. The more the old man listened, the more disappointed his face became. Alright, there's no need to report again. Let's all go down and leave Shore with me. Everyone naturally dared not rebel and withdrew from the Tai Chi hall with arched hands and fists. The beautiful woman Chen Yuan looked at her son beside the dragon chair with reluctance. Suddenly, her shoulder was patted, and when she looked up, she saw that it was her husband. Don't worry, everything is developing for the better, Jiang Yuancher comforted his wife with a slight smile from an invisible angle. Chen Yuan nodded and didn't look anymore. Turn around and walk out. The envy on the faces of the Douluo members of the Taixu sect was almost overflowing. The identity of eldest son and grandson is still very useful. The elders are still like this, and the younger generation is even more so. They don't know how to engage in intrigue. But he understood very well that his grandfather seemed to dote more on his eldest grandson. The wooden hall behind the closed door should have been slightly dimmer due to lighting issues. However, the Taiji hall is completely opposite, not only not dim, but also very bright. Taixu sect is a typical soul master sect, but it does not reject soul weapons like the aristocratic class of the Three Empires. Although the great descendants of the Taixu god still look down upon the soul master, their things are really too useful. So I turned a blind eye to the affiliated sect of procurement. Even the Tai Chi hall is equipped with soul-guiding lamps. Jiang Yundong rested his hands on Changsuan's shoulders and smiled kindly. "Let Grandpa see your other dragon-shaped martial soul," he said. Jiang Shua nodded, looking forward to his grandfather who had traveled the world for over 300 years, hoping that he would have some understanding of his other martial soul. The young man extended his tender left hand, his fingers slightly curved, and then, before he could see his movements, his voice came first. "Ong!" A loud dragon chant suddenly echoed through the entire Tai Chi hall. At the moment of seeing Changsuan's left martial soul, Jiang Yundong's originally slightly cloudy eyes suddenly cleared. The palm of the boy's shoulders involuntarily increased his strength. "Grandpa, my shoulder is going to break." The boy's painful little face twisted, and he could only whisper a reminder. Did you hurt Xiaoshuo?" "Okay, it's Grandpa's fault." The old man quickly released his hands and narrowed his eyes, smiling kindly. He already has a plan in his mind. The young man breathed a sigh of relief and didn't care about this anymore. He quickly asked, "Grandfather, do you know my second martial soul?" After speaking, the young man looked eagerly at the knowledgeable Taixu Douluo. The old man didn't answer immediately, but hung his crane hair and pondered for a moment. "I know some things, but I'm not comprehensive." According to records in mainland Chinese classics, there is a certain level of thunder attribute in the elemental martial soul, known as ultimate. This degree is extremely rare, and it won't happen once in 100 or 1,000 years. Even your grandfather and my Taixu Xianlong martial soul are extremely poor and cannot reach the ultimate level of thunder in their lifetime. I didn't expect you to stand at the pinnacle from birth. This world is really unpredictable. Jiang Yundong's mouth was slightly bitter, and after more than 300 years of hard work, it turned out to be on his grandson. Should we say it's sad or lucky? But suddenly, that bitterness turned into satisfaction. Jiang Shua's heart was already pounding uncontrollably. My goodness. Ultimate thunder. Isn't that the strongest destructive element? Son, tell your grandfather, what is your martial soul called? The young man's imagination drifted, and the old man's steady, majestic voice came to his ears once again. After finishing his mind, Jiang Shua said, "I call him the 9 Golden Dragon, and the attached thunder is what I call the 9 Golden Thunder." 9 Golden Thunder. Not bad, powerful enough. Ha ha ha, truly my grandson. Jiang Yundong suddenly stood up, stroking his beard and laughing, his voice shaking the entire hall. After a moment, the old man refocused his gaze on the young man, his expression returning to solemn and serious. "Son, remember, don't use this golden dragon martial soul for now, and don't let anyone know that you have this martial soul. Do you know?" Jiang Shua nodded repeatedly. "Got it, Grandpa." Taixu Douluo felt both melancholy and relief, and a strange thought rose in his heart. Taixu has produced a god for 1,000 years, and now it's time to calculate the days. Is it difficult to achieve? It's not me, nor is it the beginning, but Grandpa and son whispered a little more in the main hall, and Jiang Shua took the opportunity to reveal his other martial soul, allowing his talented grandfather to analyze it. Taixu Douluo was once again shocked. His expression was incredibly brilliant. He thought that a lightning bolt that could be called the level of a dragon king had already favored the Jiang family quite a bit. Unexpectedly, is there another one? Silver Shoa gun. Silver Shoa gun. This dragon pattern, why is it a bit similar to? Should it be the Silver Dragon King? The more Taixu Douluo thought about it, the more frightened he became. How did Changxuan's body withstand such powerful two types of martial souls? The Jiang family is a family that has been blessed with gods, and there is more than one. At certain times, it is possible to connect with the world above. And the Jiang family, who eventually became a deity, may be very fond of passing down divine edicts due to their personality. That is to say, I love to chat with younger generations. After a moment of silence, the old man cast his gaze back at Changsun. Son, do you know the purpose of this gun? Jiang Shua nodded in confusion and shook his head again. Maybe a little bit of perception. The Silver Shua spear is not as heavy and domineering as the 9 Xian Golden Dragon Soul, but I feel that it will absorb my soul power, and my grandson feels that it can absorb not only soul power, but also the elemental attributes in the martial soul. Jiang Yundong's face became complex again. It seems like that's it. God really favors the Jiang family. Alright, put it away. Jiang Shua obediently followed suit. Jiang Yundong looked at his short grandson with an increasingly kind gaze. Perhaps the love for him in the past came from the bloodline inheritance of the eldest son and grandson. But from now on, it is his successor's expectations for his successor. Go back and rest. Tomorrow, Grandpa will personally take you to hunt soul beasts and obtain the first soul ring. Upon hearing this, the young man was overjoyed and finally had to take the first step in his life. Okay. Thank you, grandfather. Jiang Yundong waved his hand and said, go ahead and rest well. You don't need to worry about the rest. I'll tell your father. The young man quickly nodded in agreement, bowed deeply, and then slipped out of the hall. Looking at the figure of Changsun leaving, the old man's heart was filled with mixed flavors. There is joy in the continuation of family glory and the presence of successors, as well as joy in the success and longevity of future generations. Finally, there is still a slight regret. 1,000-year-old god sitting upright on the dragon chair for a while, the old man smiled lightly and shook his head. A big dream, one must eventually wake up. After more than 300 years of struggle, we can finally be liberated. Chapter 6. Beautiful Cousin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The young man stepped out of the Tai Chi palace. A respectful expression slowly restrained. Resurrected the indifference and expressionless expression that a young master should have. The uncles who were rushed outside the palace saw the young man walking out and surrounded him one after another. Interests and rules often cannot be restrained. Taixu Douluo is the strongest person in the world, and any gift he gives to the elderly is something that these people pursue for a lifetime and cannot reach. Besides, the old man is not stingy with his eldest grandson. The first person to rub against the young man was an old man with gray hair and a withered appearance, his face as if it had been violently rubbed, with two different halves. He grabbed the young man's shoulder and urgently asked. Xiaoshua, what did your grandfather tell you? Can you talk to Uncle San? The young man raised his head and looked at his uncle, who held onto his shoulder with one hand. I didn't say anything, I just looked at my martial soul and wanted to help me hunt down the first soul ring. The uncle of the powerful attack style titled Douluo frowned, with a thick distrust floating on his eyebrows. He squinted his eyes and looked straight into the boy's eyes, questioning, don't lie to uncle, will it take so long to see a martial soul? And your martial soul, a broken gun. What's so beautiful about it? Uncle snorted lightly, somewhat disdainful. In his view, as the young leader of the Taixu sect, without a dragon-shaped martial soul, what kind of lineage is it? All of this is due to Qin Yuan, the woman who colluded with the patriarch and gave birth to such an illegitimate son. Jiang Shua knew what he was thinking from his expression, and his face immediately became indifferent. Third uncle, I am the young master, said lightly, what did the supreme elder give me, shouldn't you ask? Upon hearing this, Uncle San's face stiffened and he slowly released the slap on the boy's arm. Isn't that curious? You're a child from every family. Why are you talking to uncle like that? The young man remained unmoved and glanced indifferently, I really didn't say anything. Uncle San is too worried. He has nothing to say with these relatives who only think about empty-handed white wolves all day. At over 100 years old, I barely reached the realm of being titled Douluo, which is simply embarrassing. The young man stopped looking at him and walked towards his father with great strides. I want to go back to Humble Administrator Peak, my father. Humble Administrator Peak is his own mountain peak. Jiang Yuanshi, who had been silent all along, nodded at this moment. His serious and upright face showed a rare hint of softness. Go ahead. The young man saluted his parents, summoned a cloud and mist beast, and carried him back to the palace. The mountain breeze gently brushed against the young man's still young forehead and shoulders. He sat cross-legged on the tamed cloud and mist beast, constantly walking towards his own mountain peak. The Taixu sect is very large, very large. It's bigger than the city he lived in his previous life. This kind of big family, the warmth of human relationships, only oneself knows. It is precisely because he is a young master that not many people of his age have dared to approach him since childhood. Over time, his temperament has also become isolated. The magnificent palace, the delicate maidservants, and the endless treasure of pearls cannot fill his loneliness. Fortunately, he has now awakened his martial soul and will soon be able to control his own destiny. When he thought of this, the young man relaxed a little. Looking at the dormitories with cornices arch of wooden architecture and carved beams and painted rafters in front, he seemed to have a little more human touch. The more I look, the warmer I feel. However, how could there be a figure on the cliff outside the palace ahead? The young man frowned. The maid wouldn't be very bold, but who could that be? Quickly, the cloud and mist beast flew closer carrying him, and the beautiful figure on the cliff gradually took shape. She is a woman with long green hair on her body. Her hair was pitch black like ink, bright and discerning, and her eyes were calm and unfathomable like a deep pool. However, they did not give off an unfathomable feeling, only making people feel that she should be a very gentle woman. The girl standing in front of the cliff, with skin as crystal clear as jade, fair as snow, but her appearance can only be considered above average, not too stunning. On the contrary, those peerless long legs, half exposed due to wearing a blue dress, were quite eye-catching. Round and full, devoid of dust and dirt, like a natural white jade. Jiang Shua quickly recognized the person and a hint of surprise appeared on his face. Cousin. Why are you here? The person coming is Jiang Yun, the daughter of his second cousin. At the age of only 23, he is already a strong soul saint, and even in the Taixu sect, he is a rare heavenly pride. The girl smiled with a gentle and dignified expression, which made her smile even more approachable. Her eyes narrowed into crescent moon. Let's take a look at you, younger brother. I heard that someone did not awaken their dragon-shaped martial soul and came specifically to comfort them. Jiang Shua jumped off the cloud mist beast and walked over to his cousin, awkwardly scratching his cheek. It's actually nothing, it's not that we can't live anymore. And I still have innate soul power, and my martial soul silver spear is not bad either. The girl followed her cousin slowly towards his bedroom. It's good to see that you're not feeling down. Sister, protect you from now on. Haha, that's settled. But isn't Yunar on a mission? I heard others say they went to the Sun and Moon Empire, how was it there? Jiang Shua waved his hand and didn't want to discuss this topic much, asking elsewhere. This question asked Jiang Yun, who lowered her head and pondered for a moment before saying. A very powerful country, the Soul Guide has been widely popularized among the people, and the military can also be imagined. Although there are no truly extreme strongmen yet, it is probably not far away. Jiang Shua smiled slightly but did not refute. The Empire of Sun and Moon certainly has the ultimate strength, and there is more than one. Just being crushed to death by Shrek from the First Academy in mainland China. That pile of evil soul master insects is probably now trapped in the demon forest. Yi Shishui, Long Xiaoyao, these guys are not easy to deal with. My grandfather asked me to hide my second martial soul, probably out of hiding awkwardness, to avoid being targeted too early. Skipping the topic again, Jiang Shua smiled at his cousin and said, "Why don't we stay together for lunch?" The girl nodded happily and said, "No problem. Let me taste Lord Xiao's lunch and see how luxurious it is." The lunch of the young master of Taixu sect is indeed luxurious. At the moment of bringing it up, even the soul saint Jiang Yun was stunned. She shrugged her small and sparkling nose and said strangely, "Is this the tender thigh meat of a 5,000-year-old spirit wind deer? The one we stewed together, shouldn't it be the snow lingji that only grows on the Arctic land?" The girl's eyes were clear, she was not the legitimate grandson, and the second elder of the Taixu sect was not the only daughter. Moreover, she estimates that even her other sisters may not enjoy such treatment on a daily basis, and this dish alone would cost tens of thousands of gold soul coins. Food ingredients are still hard to come by. Jiang Shua smiled without refuting. Although the humble administrator's palace is usually deserted, no one dares to withhold his treatment. The miserable situation of Huiyuhao cannot happen. Chapter 7. The Daily Life of the Jiang Family in Taixu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Eat it, cousin, don't worry about me. I'm tired of eating a long time ago, the young man gestured with a smile. Jiang Yun lifted her eyes quietly and said angrily, "Brother, are you showing off to your sister?" "No way." Jiang Shua raised his eyebrows. "What I said is all truth, I'm really tired of it. Although I don't have much resistance to complaining, after all, I'm just an enjoyment. It's not good to waste it, eat quickly." The young man patted his cousin's hand and urged him to hand over 2 ivory chopsticks. Jiang Yun nodded helplessly and said, "That sister is really impolite." She took the chopsticks, picked up the plump and appetizing deer leg meat, and put it into her mouth. "Take a bite and burst the juice." One drop overflowed from the corner of the mouth and flowed onto the chin of the water bamboo. Jiang Shua picked up the tablecloth next to him and carefully wiped away the drop of oil from his friend who had finally come. "Eat well, don't worry about me." In just half an hour, the 11 dishes served were swept away by Jiang Yun, leaving only a table full of golden plates. The young man glanced strangely at Jiang Yun's belly. Surprisingly, it only slightly bulged. "Is it so edible? It's hard to tell from the outside. I thought she was a graceful lady, but I didn't expect she was also a foodie." "Ha, I'm full, I'm holding on." Jiang Yun was half lying on the rattan chair in the restaurant, caressing her slightly raised abdomen while looking up at the ceiling with a happy expression on her face. She looked so gentle and dignified at the edge of the cliff, completely helpless. The blue lotus dress on her arm was also casually lifted by her, revealing a large layer of snowy skin. Jiang Shua smiled and said, "If you think it's delicious, come and see me more in the future. I can't leave the sect, but you can come." Jiang Yun nodded lightly and said, "No problem, will I come to see you once a month in the future? My younger brother remembers to prepare the food in advance, waiting for my sister to come." "Haha, it's so strange to say that." Although she spoke strangely, she still stretched her long legs as much as possible under the table for more comfort. The space of the boy across from him was constantly encroached upon, and he had to constantly shrink his feet. However, Jiang Yun seemed to be playing with it, constantly teasing Jiang Shua's calves with her delicate toes. Jiang Shua lowered his head and could see the small exposed fair ankle. A itching sensation suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart, feeling helpless for a moment. "Stop playing with Yun'er, sister, haven't seen you for almost 2 years. What level has your Taixu Jinyuan cultivation reached? Upon hearing the inquiry, the girl who was half paralyzed on the wicker chair finally got a little serious. She reached out her green and white fingers and scratched her cheek. Let's go to the middle of the 4th floor, there's still a long way to go from the 5th floor. But my elixir field is already large enough, and the soul power transformed from the true element is almost 5 or 6 times that of an ordinary soul saint. Upon hearing this, Jiang Shua's eyes flickered for a moment. The cousin, known as Tianjiao, can only reach the 4th level of soul saint cultivation. And before even obtaining his first soul ring, he had already advanced to the early stage of the 3rd layer. Is it because the soul penetrates and the soul is resilient? Or was it because of the identity of the young patriarch that he was instilled with something to change his physique from a young age? Xiaoshua, what are you thinking? My cousin suddenly spoke, and a faint blush appeared on her pretty face. Because the direction in which the young man lowered his head was her snow-white thighs, which were exposed due to her short dress. Although the customs within the sect are somewhat feudal, the nobles on the mainland are very open-minded. She has just returned from the Sun and Moon Empire and has not had time to change her clothes. Unexpectedly, this little boy has been staring at her so much. Ah! Jiang Shua, who was lost in thought, was suddenly awakened and raised his eyebrows, looking at his cousin across from him. At this moment, Jiang Yun had silently retracted her long legs and regretted the teasing just now. Seeing him bewildered, he immediately realized that he seemed to have misunderstood and hurriedly said, "It's nothing, nothing. You rest, I should go now. I haven't seen my father yet." After speaking, Jiang Yun stood up with a loud climb and ran awkwardly out of the dining hall of the humble administrator's palace. Jiang Shua blinked in confusion, but didn't say anything. Judging from my cousin's dusty appearance, it does seem like she has just arrived at the sect. After a moment, humble administrator Peak returned to desolation, leaving him alone once again. But now he no longer has a lot of lonely emotions, and instead has a sweet and comfortable feeling in his heart. The young man walked out of the dining room, entered the practice room, and sat down. Start running the Taixu True Yuan decision cycle, big and small Zhou Tian. It is precisely through complex and repetitive cycles that a small amount of true elemental power can be infused into the elixir field. Every time Jiang Shua practices this technique, he is amazed by it. If there is a turtle speed technique in this world, it may be this Taixu True Yuan Ju. Because it's just too boring. Although it also depends on the talent and understanding of the cultivator, the true element is not a skill that can be achieved overnight. Only through the cycle of day and night, tireless repetition, can such a trace of the true element be born. The true element born in the early stage of the true Yuan Ju is so pitiful that it cannot be compared to the soul power obtained through meditation. Undoubtedly, such effectiveness is extremely tedious for soul masters, far less efficient than the soul power obtained through meditation. Although the sect forces every disciple of the Jiang family to practice, most people hold a mediocre mentality, and even many titled Douluo powerhouses only reach the 4th or 5th level. And more people, the true Yuan born in the 3rd year of their entry, are not enough to unite the Taixu children of Dantian, and there are many people around. Knowing that this dull and boring end is a powerful strength, there will be the vast majority of people who cannot bear it and give up on cultivating soul power with true Yuan. Of course, when a person chooses a cultivation method, the cultivation method may also choose a person. Those boredom may be the threshold. After 2 lifetimes, Jiang Shua, who had a slightly better temperament than ordinary people, felt that he could persevere. So every time he enters, it is common for him to go to the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com for more than 10 hours. The sun rises eastward, and mist evaporates in the mountains and forests. On that day, his head shone on humble administrator Peak, and the young man slowly opened his eyes. Opening the door of the practice room, I found the charming maid, Ho, who had already been respectful, outside the door. "Young master, you can have breakfast now. You said you're going to hunt for soul rings today." Jiang Shua nodded lightly and walked for a few minutes before arriving at the dining hall. The table made of precious rosewood had already been set with meals. Large and noble children are usually arranged with tonic diet to replace ordinary food. The difference lies in the preciousness of tonic diet. In front of Jiang Shua, there was a special food ingredient from the far north that even the 4 imperial princes could not enjoy. Compared to the starry forest, the environment in the far north is extremely harsh. But it is the herbs born in this harsh environment that are the most resilient and tenacious. The energy contained in it may not be as good as that produced in the holy pool, but the gallbladder is quite suitable for human absorption, because what remains in the harsh and dry environment is essence. The Taixu sect has an affiliated sect located on the far northern edge, specifically responsible for collecting and transporting herbs. Millennium Ice Bird's Nest Soup, congee made from the fattest part of Millennium Ice Bear, and ice pith transported in whole pieces into water. Jiang Shua's daily meal specifications exceed 100,000 gold soul coins. You should know that some cities on the mainland have annual taxes of less than 100,000 yuan. Only a sect like Taixu sect dared to be so grand. The level of luxury on the table made Jiang Shua a bit reluctant to speak. From this perspective, the father, who has always been serious and dignified, although rarely accompanies him, has already reached the pinnacle of material well-being. Chapter 8. Dark Demon and Evil God Tiger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After finishing breakfast, I took a walk in the courtyard in front of the hall. The young man saw his grandfather Jiang Yundong appearing. The oldest and highest achieving elder on the mainland. According to Jiang Shua's memory, whether it was Shrek's dragon god Douluo Mu En or the Holy Spirit's dragon emperor Douluo Long Xiaoyao, their age was no match for their grandfather Jiang Yundong. Thinking in his heart, but his footsteps were not slow at all, the young man walked up to Taixu Douluo and slowly bent down to salute. "My grandson has met my grandfather." Before finishing speaking, Jiang Yundong interrupted with a smile. All right, when there are only you and my grandchildren, there's no need to be bound by these formalities. Sure hasn't left the sect yet, has he? Let's go, Grandpa will take you to broaden your horizons." The old man stroked his beard and smiled, while propping up the young man with his arms and stepping into the air. The young man was in a daze before his eyes, and the two of them left the range of humble administrator Peak. The old man took another step, and the tall humble administrator Peak turned into a black dot. What a fast speed! Shrink to an inch. It's still the spatial magic of extreme Douluo. The young man was unknown, but he was quickly drawn to the nearby scenery. After leaving the realm of the Taixu sect, vastly different architectural forms began to emerge. Unlike the pure wooden palaces within the sect, the houses in the small town below are more Western style. Moreover, in Jiang Shua's memory, there are many different customs between Taixu sect and Douluo continent. He likes to eat rice, use chopsticks, stick couplets, and worship ancestors during festivals, all of which are very similar to his past life in Kyushu. He once asked his father, and Jiang Yuanshi said that it was a rule left over from the time of the founding of the sect, which was established by the ancestor Taixu Shen. The young man's mind was strange for a while, and various conflicts that were different from the original made him doubt whether his ancestor Taixu Shen was also. Taixu sect is located in the eastern part of the Heavenly Soul Empire, heading south to the border of the 3 major empires. It is also the boundary between Starry Forest and Shrek Academy. After walking for a while, the two of them crossed countless miles. Finally, the towering ancient wood ahead caught the young man's eye. The primitive feeling emanating from the dense forests that cover the sky and sun makes people feel a hint of fear from afar. The towering tree, reaching up to 100 meters high, forms a natural barrier across the sky. Based on the classics and memories, Jiang Shua estimated that the star forest was indeed a bit outrageous, probably equivalent to half of the land area of China in his previous life. The original work is quite contradictory, let's make our own assumptions. I heard there are various ecosystems inside, and there are over 10 million types of soul beasts. My grandfather brought me here, which is probably due to the wide range of options available. Jiang Yundong ignored the taboo of not being able to fly over the starry forest and directly crossed the outer 500 kilometers with Jiang Shua, landing in the 1,000-year soul beast zone. Grandchild, remember that being able to call the wind and rain in shallow waters is not a skill, but surviving in deep waters is more commendable. The Millennium Soul beasts in the Wanyan district must be stronger than those on the periphery, and you can do the same in the future, the old man smiled and earnestly instructed Changsun. Jiang Shua nodded on his small face, full of agreement. However, this is also due to the fact that his soul ring age is not too low, and the optimal age for the first soul ring is around 460 years. But he, who has received medicine and physical training since childhood, cannot be filled with a century-old soul ring. Moreover, the divine-level technique Taixu Yuan is not only capable of increasing soul power, but also constantly improving and expanding his meridians. Now that he has reached the third level of cultivation, Jiang Shua estimates that he can withstand soul rings for about 3,000 years. Even higher. Upon hearing this, the young man with a sense in his heart summoned out his first martial soul and held it heavily in his hand. He suddenly had a feeling that if he didn't retract it in the future, would the fit between the martial soul and the person reach perfection. Do whatever you say, the boy tied the gun with a cloth strip behind his back. Jiang Yundong looked at him with a smile and remained silent. But in my heart, I am quite satisfied with Changsun's intelligence. I draw analogies from him, just like him. The grandfather and grandson walked in the dense forest, constantly searching for prey. As a powerful attack on the martial soul, the silver Shua spear naturally cannot absorb soul rings casually. In addition, in order to match the quality, Jiang Yundong's vision is very picky, not even glancing at several suitable sub-dragon level soul beasts. Jiang Shua didn't complain at all and followed his grandfather seriously, looking around with his eyes. But with a silver spear that has a trace of the power of the Silver Dragon King's origin, isn't the soul ring so easy to find? Firstly, without water, fire, earth, wind, light, darkness, and space, these 7 elemental powers have eliminated not less than half of them. The two of them searched for almost an hour, but couldn't find a true dragon level or soul beast with true dragon blood. Jiang Yundong's expression was relaxed, as if he was not in any hurry. Jiang Shua, seeing this situation, also calmed down and looked around. The process of searching itself is also a way to broaden one's horizons. Half an hour later. Finally, a pitch-black tiger lying under a 100-meter silver tree caught Jiang Shua's eye. That is a pure black giant tiger with no impurities in its hair, and its body length exceeds 3 meters. A pair of blood-red vertical eyes were filled with a sinister aura, as if they were about to devour everything they saw. Its tail stands up, like a sharp curved hook. Strangely, the tiger's tail is not flesh and blood, but rather segments of bones. At the moment of seeing the black tiger, Jiang Yundong's eyes narrowed. After a moment, he smiled. Son, your luck is very good. Although you didn't find the soul beast with the true dragon bloodline, you actually found a dark demon evil god tiger with the evil god bloodline. It has more than one attribute, the most suitable silver spear for you. The young man was suddenly surprised and astonished. The dark demon and evil god tiger. Isn't that the soul beast that almost knocked over the sea god Tang Sect? He vaguely remembered that the dark demon and evil god tiger, which had been around for 60,000 years, almost killed the Tang clan ancestors of the half-sea god. Fortunately, this should only last for 10,000 years, and Jiang Shua breathed a sigh of relief. Quickly, he also became excited, and it was precisely because of these reasons that it demonstrated the top level of this soul beast. Grandfather, I'll take him. The young man stood still and said resolutely. Taixu Douluo turned his head slightly and a smile flashed in his eyes. Son, this is a dark demon and evil god tiger that has been around for 4,000 years. Have you figured it out? It exceeds the optimal lifespan by 9 times. Jiang nodded lightly, but his expression was relaxed and freehand. Isn't it okay for a grandson to be bolder with his grandfather here? Life is not risky, it's a waste of time in this world. Ha ha ha, good. It's truly my grandchild from Taixu Douluo, then that's it. After speaking, the old man took a step and his palms suddenly leaned forward. The black tiger under the silver tree was keenly aware of danger, with its fur exploding all over its body. A pitch-black thunderbolt the size of an arm suddenly shot out from the king character above its head. Bang! The pitch-black thunder contains a violent destructive nature, and wherever it passes through, grass and trees are all gray. Even the ground has been plowed out into grooves with a diameter of 2 meters. Chapter 9. Soul Power, Level 15. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, the thunder did not even reach Jiang in front of Jiang and quietly disappeared. The palm of Taixu Douluo's outstretched hand was slightly clenched, and the silver flower tree exploded in an instant. The dark demon evil god tiger was suddenly grabbed and lifted into mid-air. One move to defeat the enemy. There is no suspense. The 4,000-year-old dark demon evil god tiger is a powerful creature comparable to a 40,000-year-old soul beast, but it cannot even pass a single move in the hands of Taixu Douluo. Bang! The black tiger exploded on all 4 limbs, with blood shooting everywhere. It was still alive in the last second, and in an instant, it was on the brink of death. Son, go take care of him. Remember, you'll be killed in one blow, Jiang said lightly. Jiang nodded, took off the silver spear behind him, and strode towards the dark demon evil god tiger. The black tiger had all its limbs broken, leaving only its massive body lying on the ground covered in black blood. Those blood-red and bloodthirsty eyes were now filled with fear. Jiang walked 1 foot in front of black tiger and looked at it quietly. The black tiger looked extremely pitiful, with its entire body covered in its own blood. The huge pain in its limbs caused all the king characters on its forehead to wrinkle together. Woo 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 woo, the dark demon tiger let out a mournful cry, and the trembling in its voice made one's heart tremble. However, Jiang remained indifferent and unmoved. Pushi. The silver spear pierced through the forehead of the dark demon tiger and directly pierced his spinal cord. Woo! Black tiger widened his eyes, incredulous that a 6-year-old child should have such a cold heart. Jiang sat cross-legged in front, pulling the purple soul ring onto himself with both hands. As soon as the soul ring, which was all purple to black, approached, the fierce and violent energy rushed up in an instant. Jiang body trembled and he almost couldn't sit still, falling to the ground. In the moment he closed his eyes, the overwhelming killing intent and dark aura filled his spiritual sea. The young man gritted his teeth and straightened his waist. The resilient and strong soul power in the sea of spirit also began to help him drive away the invading evil spirits and evil thoughts. Bang! 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 The true power and soul power in Jiang body constantly resist and decompose against the violent power of the dark demon and evil god tiger. All of this battlefield is within him. Thanks to the physical strength and meridians forged since childhood, the young man did not explode and died. But a fierce struggle was inevitable, as black smoke emanated from the boy's head and layers of black blood oozed from his skin. 10 minutes will pass. Half an hour has passed. An hour has passed. The intense struggle did not stop, but instead intensified. The young boy's tender face began to lose its color and became extremely pale, with his entire skin being completely damaged by the energy impact. Jiang sighed slightly, it seems that it's still too forced. Suddenly, a towering evil thought surged out of the young man's head, soaring into the clouds, and the soil layer within 3 meters beside him flipped over. Bang! Jiang Shua's temple exploded with a muffled sound, piercing straight into the old man's ear. Jiang Yundong's face changed slightly, and he suddenly placed his palm on Changxuan's head. The true elemental power on his body was about to overflow, and he forcefully abolished the soul-absorbing ring. Soul power may repel each other, but the Taixu True Yuan, who is a fellow practitioner of the Jiang family, will never. The old man's palm had just been placed on it, but the next moment he sensed a slight abnormality. How could the soul power in Changxuan's body, which was originally dry, suddenly become abundant? The fact is indeed so. The 4,000-year energy of the dark demon evil god tiger is really too violent, far beyond what Jiang Shua's first soul ring can bear. The young man who had settled down had already fallen into a state of stagnation and confusion. Suddenly, the true elemental power stored in his dantian suddenly became unowned. Quickly covering and protecting his entire body, his meridians, vital points, etc. were slowly healed by a gentle force. Even the newly exploded temple was miraculously healing at a miraculous speed. In the blink of an eye, the remaining power of that energy was forcibly dissipated by the power of the true element, and all was suppressed into the soul ring formed by oneself. Another 10 minutes have passed. The boy, covered in blood, finally opened his eyes. His face remained pale, but his body stood upright. Because the young man's father once said, "A man must have what a man should have." Jiang Yundong placed his hand on Changxuan's shoulder and felt the sensation sweeping across his entire body. After a moment, the old man breathed a sigh of relief and smiled with relief. "Not bad, I have successfully absorbed it, and I am truly my grandson." The boy tugged at his stiff face and forced a smile. "Grandfather, I have absorbed all the power of that evil god into the silver spear. But there seems to be something wrong with my martial soul." Upon hearing this, Taixu Douluo's eyes instantly opened and he said, "What's the situation? Tell my grandfather quickly. He can check his body, but he can't easily explore the anomalies deep in his martial soul." Jiang Shua pursed the bloody liquid on his lips and comforted, "It's a good thing. Grandfather doesn't have to worry. Yes. My silver spear seems to have given birth to an aura. I call it the guardian of evil gods. After being released, it seems that I can be covered with a layer of gray airflow and used as armor. Grandfather, look." The young man slammed his silver gun onto the ground, and in an instant, the sky turned gray-purple with a faint flash of thunder. He was also covered in the same gray airflow. "Grandfather, in this similar field of aura, my speed and strength will skyrocket to 300%, and I can also have something similar to a defensive body." The young man paused and held the spear tightly in his right hand, handing it forward. The first soul skill, Dark Demon and Evil Thunder. As the voice fell, Jiang Shua transformed into a black thunder, accompanied by the speed of the wind and the interference of evil energy. After blinking, the long spear covered with 3 attributes rushed towards Taixu Douluo. Ding! Taixu Douluo caught the tip of the gun with both fingers. But there was a hint of interest on his face. "Not bad, it is indeed a combination of thunder, wind, power, and evil energy." The young man withdrew his spear and struck it to the ground again. After exerting his domain and first soul skill, although his face became even paler, his eyes were burning and flickering. The young man excitedly said, "Grandfather, my first soul skill can be further increased by about 100%. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net, like the domain, also has attribute blessings. 300% plus 100% is 400%, in addition to the power of wind and lightning and interference from evil spirits. And even if all of these are blocked, there will still be a fierce physical force impact. Blood earned." Jiang Yundong smiled and sighed. "Your first soul skill surpasses Grandpa. But in your field, The young man shook his head in confusion and said, "It seems that the evil god Tiger, seeing that it was unable to erode the sea, took the initiative to compress the power of the evil god into my silver spear, and then there was this strange thing." Jiang Yundong pondered for a moment, as if thinking of something. He looked up and down at Changsuan's silver spear for a while. "Forget it, as long as it's not a bad thing." As he spoke, he reminded, "Don't forget that you still have the true elemental power of Dantian, which can continue to output." "That's right. Not only do I have fierce attacks, but I also have much more endurance than an ordinary soul master." Despite his extraordinary nature, Jiang Shua almost fainted happily. "I really made a lot of money. Not only did I get such a great amplification soul skill, but I also picked up a field in vein. And it seems that the Dantian inside the body has also expanded, successfully entering the middle of the third layer. Both grandfather and grandson are very satisfied." Suddenly, a slight movement occurred in the distant branches of the tree, and the chaotic footsteps quickly approached. The newcomer quickly broke through the bushes and arrived at the brutal battlefield. It was precisely in the moment before the absorption was completed that the dark demon evil god Tiger released a massive evil idea, which attracted other soul masters. 4 women and 1 man. Wearing a fecal green uniform, 2 of the leading women were around 20 years old, while the other 3 young girls looked like 12 or 13 years old. Chapter 10. Facing Ma Xiaotao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Shrek monitoring team is here. Dirty evil soul master, today I will definitely shatter your corpses into pieces. 4 women and 1 man came out for a moment, and immediately saw the ruins of the war on the ground, as well as the dark demon and evil god Tiger that still had evil energy surging into the sky and black blood flowing. Therefore, they immediately recognized Jiang Yundong and his grandson as the evil soul master. They may not know the lying evil soul beast on the ground, but they believe that the soul master who can absorb such an evil soul ring is definitely not a good person. The girl who shouted the slogan was Ma Xiaotao, one of the 7, with long red wavy hair and a melon seed face. The leader of the supervision team, Zhang Lishuan, squinted her beautiful phoenix eyes and scanned the pair of grandparents and grandchildren ahead from side to side. The old man was dressed in a luxurious purple and gold robe, with several dragon patterns on it that violated the rules. You should know that this is a crime that requires beheading in all 4 empires, even the title Douluo of Dragon Martial Soul would not do so. And the 6 or 7-year-old boy standing next to the old man made Zhang Lishuan feel a hint of displeasure in her heart. This feeling was not right, but it did exist. A strange combination of grandfather and grandson, dressed in exceptionally luxurious attire. Zhang Lishuan suppressed the unpleasant feeling and tried to make herself think seriously. Dare to wear such clothes openly, maybe not necessarily. Zhang Lishuan was still thinking, but the blonde boy in the team spoke up first. Dai Yueheng took a step out and clasped his fists, saying, "I'm very sorry, senior. It seems that we recklessly recognized you as evil soul masters. We are all students of Shrek College and are carrying out the college's supervisory tasks." Jiang Yundong stood with his sleeves folded, hearing the 5 words, Shrek Academy. His rosy face did not show any signs of fluctuation. He developed a desire to take the school entrance exam and kicked his eldest grandson with his toes, hoping to hone his skills. Jiang Shua looked back in confusion and understood when he saw his grandfather's expression. He calmly scanned the group of young boys and girls. "Shrek, is it amazing?" asked the voice coldly. Upon hearing such an answer, Dai Yueheng was stunned. He never expected that anyone in this world would dare to say so about the world's top college. And the red wave horse Xiaotao, who was the first to speak earlier, was completely angry. She failed to recognize the extraordinary nature of her grandfather and grandson like her senior sister Zhang Lishuan and Duke's son Dai Yueheng, and timely restrained her emotions. On the contrary, they believed that these evil soul masters were extremely bold and fearless. When they saw the famous Shrek supervision team, they not only did not run away, but also spoke contemptuously. "Humph. A group of mice hiding in the darkness dare to comment on Shrek one day. Then I'll let you know today what the end of the evil soul master is. After Ma Xiaotao finished speaking, her martial soul instantly possessed her body, and a towering flame roared towards the evil soul master on the opposite side. In the team, Dai Yueheng was instantly shocked. As the son of the duke, he had a better understanding of the gold content of the purple golden dragon robe than Zhang Lishuan. Xiaotao. Stop it. Dai Yueheng immediately possessed his martial soul and reached out to grab Ma Xiaotao, but he couldn't hold on. Upon hearing the words of the former Star Luo royal family in the team, Zhang Lishuan's mind trembled and she promptly caught the impulsive student. But she still couldn't tell what identities the two people across from her were. However, there was no need for her to look, as Ma Xiaotao's shameless words raised a hint of anger in Jiang Shua's heart. The young man, regardless of the number of people ahead, was too lazy to waste his breath. He pulled his gun out of the soil and the only purple soul ring instantly lit up. After breaking through the soul warrior, the soul power surged to level 15 and suddenly boiled. Boom! The young man stepped out, his speed skyrocketing, and the gun's body was shrouded in purple-black thunder. Shoo! The tip of the gun suddenly thrust out, and in the blink of an eye, it reached Ma Xiaotao's doorstep. Dai Yueheng's pupils shrank violently. He never expected the other party to be so bold and ruthless, disregarding Shrek's reputation and not saying a word before taking action. And even though he was already at level 30, he felt a palpitating sensation under the first soul skill of this one-ring soul master. Is his first soul ring from 1,000 years old? Zhang Lishuan also did not expect the other party to be so bold and reckless. She dared to suddenly attack Shrek's core disciple before explaining her identity as the evil soul master. She put aside her previous speculation, her face slightly darkened, and in response, she stretched out two delicate, scallion white fingers, trying to block Jiang Shua's gun tip. But at the moment she took action, suddenly a overwhelming pressure appeared and pressed down on her. The master sister in the inner courtyard's face instantly turned red, her bones clattered, and her body remained motionless. She could only watch helplessly as the tip of the thunderous gun thrust towards Ma Xiaotao's face. Ma Xiaotao, who had no restrictions, was even more furious. This damn evil soul master dared to take the lead in attacking her, he was completely clueless. The third soul skill, Phoenix Wings soaring in the sky. Behind Ma Xiaotao, there were dazzling huge wings and phoenix tails, and she rose into the air, surrounded by flames that quickly spread for hundreds of meters. Standing in the air, she was like a fiery witch, but her eyes were unusually cold. The first soul skill, Phoenix Fire Line. A straight flame spewed out from Ma Xiaotao's mouth, and Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net bravely welcomed the long spear charging towards the young man. Upon seeing the two skills released in a row, Jiang Shua not only remained steadfast, but also increased his speed, bringing the distance of 100 meters closer between the two. The tip of the gun, wrapped in a dark purple thunder, collided directly with the Phoenix Fire Line spit out by Ma Xiaotao. In an instant, a violent energy burst from the center of the two attacks, and the air suddenly exploded. Zhang Lishuan's face changed drastically as she was pinned down, and she quickly shouted, "Everyone, step back. If so, protect the younger students." Behind the master sister in the inner courtyard, a cold woman dressed in a blue dress immediately stepped out and exerted a soul power barrier to block Dai Yueheng and Ling Luochen. But Ma Xiaotao in front of her didn't care, because Han Ruo also had a hint of Shrek's pride. How could Ma Xiaotao, who is at level 33, fail to defeat a first-ring soul master who has just obtained a soul ring? However, she miscalculated. Ma Xiaotao, who possessed the evil fire phoenix, suddenly fell into a disadvantage. After Jiang Shua used his first soul skill, although his strength and speed increased significantly, he still couldn't immediately defeat the red-haired girl on the opposite side. He then directly exerted the domain skills of the evil god Tiger Circle on his gun body, and the evil god guarded it. Almost instantly, the gray airflow enveloped the two into a huge circular transparent cover. Jiang Shua obtained gray flow armor, and his strength, speed, and thunder power increased by 300%. Although Ma Xiaotao is already a soul lord, even the third millennium soul ring cannot be compared to the 4,000-year dark demon evil god tiger. So, in almost an instant, the phoenix thread that she spat out of her mouth was pierced and shattered. Jiang Shua's silver gun broke through the obstacle and stabbed 3 inches in front of her mouth, almost passing through her head in the blink of an eye.